Price Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Carrie Gillen.
I'm Megan Figueroa, and here we are.
Here we are.
And congratulations, Carrie. I heard you have a book that is officially, or a manuscript that's officially going forward.
And congratulations to you as well. I hear the same thing.
Thank you. Stop it.
Yeah, so we're officially accepted to finalize our book. So now we just got to finish the work.
Yeah. So yeah, congratulations to us.
Yes. Yes, I'm very excited.
And then next month is our 9th podcasting anniversary, which is wild.
Yeah. So yes. Anyway, yeah, you have something to tell me.
Yeah. So you are in it, the World Cup, in a way that I'm not, because you are in Vancouver, which is one of the host cities.
Yes. And this next week week and a bit is going to be the last of our participation. But yes, it's been actually pretty exciting. I have to admit, game days, especially when it's the Canadian team. So we've had two games where the Canadians were playing. Les Rouges. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, the city is just electric. So
that is so fun. And isn't it even fun when out of towners are there?
Oh my God, so many people. Yeah, I overheard some Kiwis talking about, because that was the game, the New Zealand versus, I don't remember who they were playing that night. That was their night, so I overheard some of them talking. There were all these Egyptians wearing headdresses and Egyptian style headdresses, and I don't know, just it's been very exciting to see all these international travelers. Some of them are obviously Canadians, but yeah, it's been fun.
No, I'm glad, because it could have felt really intrusive. I could imagine.
I mean, I guess it still is intrusive. Certain things are totally changed. There's no way to get to the stadium from the normal SkyTrain station that you would get off at. So you have to get off at the one by Science World. So anyone who knows Vancouver, you know where Science World is. The big ball, which has been turned into a FIFA ball, as well as to a soccer ball, which is also very cute. Yeah. I hate FIFA, but it's too cute.
Yes.
Anyway, you have to walk all the way from there to the stadium. It's not super far, but it's a trek. So everyone turns it into this big parade of the fans. Yeah. Anyway, so I will be a little bit sad when it's all in the States and there's none here.
Well, yeah, I actually didn't realize they were narrowing it down to basically come out of Mexico and Canada into finishing the States.
Yeah.
No, because I feel like Canada and Mexico have been much more gracious hosts, obviously. Yeah, and so speaking of fuck FIFA, there is this viral moment that recently happened. And keep in mind, Mexico is a co-host, right? And so Spanish is actually it's always relevant because the Spanish-speaking world is very much football fans, right? But it's particularly relevant here where we have a host country, Mexico, where they're Spanish-speaking, and the press is Spanish-speaking. So this viral moment happened a couple of weeks ago. So this actually is from a Yahoo Sports article taken from Awful Announcing by a guy called Manny Soloway. There was a situation where a FIFA official completely cut off a Mexican journalist from asking a question in Spanish. But since that happened, FIFA decided to change its rules. So what happened was, before the Morocco-Brazil game in New Jersey, the Rodrigo Ornelas of Mexico's TV Azteca asked Morocco's Ashraf Hakimi, fuck him, I'll say in a second. He was born in Spain and speaks Spanish. So Rodrigo, it appears that he doesn't he's not comfortable in English. He wanted to ask Ashraf this question in Spanish. And when he tries to ask the question in Spanish, the FIFA official says, no, you can't do that. You can't ask that in Spanish. But Ashraf basically was intervened and said he can ask it in Spanish. I speak Spanish. And he wanted to answer in Spanish as well, but the FIFA person told him, no, answer in English at least.
Wow.
Yeah. So following backlash, FIFA says that they will ensure that Spanish translation is available for all press conferences, which I think...
That's not the issue, though.
No, there's a bigger issue, yeah. But also, I feel like that should have been handled from the jump if you have Mexico as one of the co-hosts of the... Right? Here's what was done previously. They only provided translation in English and
Interpretation.
interpretation in English and the languages requested by the participating teams. So in this case, Morocco against Brazil, the languages were Arabic and Portuguese. So those 3 languages were allowed during that press conference. But again, Spanish makes sense given Mexico is going to, of course, send its journalists. They're a co-hosting city.
I guess they just didn't think that anybody on the Moroccan team would be a Spanish speaker.
Yeah.
So they just didn't even think that it would come up.
Yeah. But also you got to imagine that there are some Mexican journalists that are going to go see a New Zealand and Russia game or whatever, and they're just not going to be able to speak English. So like, they won't be able to ask the questions. They would need some sort of interpretation for the question to be, asked in English or in Russian or in...
I mean, that would be the case anyway, because probably the people on the other teams wouldn't understand either, right? If they just asked their... Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they should have been allowed to have interpretation.
But of course, this all basically brings up, like, this is great for Spanish speakers, both in Mexico and just around the world, because, again, they are like a large population. People that are watching.
Aren't they like the 3rd largest language speaker group in the world?
That and I think their proportion of being
soccer fans, yeah.
It just brings up a bunch of questions, and I'm not surprised that I knew language would be an issue during the World Cup, and it's just playing out in really interesting ways, and language is everywhere.
Yes, it is. I am genuinely surprised that there was no consideration of the Spanish part. Just because Mexico. Just because of Mexico.
Yeah. And also just a side note, I said fuck Ashraf Hakimi. He last week was just he is going to be charged with rape in France. So here's one of these things. I read an article. There are several men that are playing in the World Cup that have had rape allegations in their past, and not you and I, Carrie, but a lot of people are uplifting them. And it just speaks to our worldwide misogyny and not allowing the victims to have justice in this and these things. So
no, absolutely.
So anyway, I hope people are enjoying the World Cup and that your country, you have someone that you're cheering for.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying watching Mexico.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So far, I've only seen half of one game. That was Canada-Switzerland because I was at lunch hour. So a bunch of us at work all watched together. And then at one, I went back to work. And I'm not sure if everyone else did, but whatever. It's not my business.
Yeah. Yep.
It was also the most boring part of that game because all the scoring happened in the second half. Oh, well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and it's so exciting, though. It's so exciting because, it doesn't happen that often. And people, don't like soccer for that reason, where it's it's so, they score so little. It's because of the level of skill we're talking about here.
Yeah. I would rather watch that than something
baseball?
That's just well, baseball's also not necessarily high scoring.
Yeah.
But basketball is such high scores. I'm why not just play for 5 minutes then? It feels like only the last 5 minutes matter.
Right.
Yeah. It's not always the case, but...
Right. Yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Anyway, so this episode we get to talk with another podcaster about
Canada.
Yeah, about Canada and his language background, which is interesting. It's because, there's plenty of people with French Canadian background who don't really speak much French anymore. And,
yeah. And the way that I was the odd one out in this conversation is very obvious. Yeah. I mean, you got to explain what a Canuck is to me. So, I got to imagine there's a lot of Americans who don't know what that's referring to. So,
yeah. So enjoy. Today we're very excited to have Kelly Gaumont, who is the host, writer, and editor of Canuck is a Slur podcast, a podcast about highly specific Canadian culture and history. So welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Also, you don't have to apologize because the way you said it was still more accurate than the anglicization I gave you, so...
I know, but I was but And then I Frenched it.
I don't want you to German it and pronounce it Gaumont. People tend to look at it and assume they're like, oh, that's ow. And I'm like, no, it's definitely not.
That's what I thought when I read it. But my French is terrible.
My oldest brother has a story of when he was in junior high. So I think it was junior high. Worst age for this to happen. But they did one of those things where it was maybe some kind of cuts for a team or a track and field day or posting times or something. It was everyone's names posted on a wall in the gym. And they had typoed his name as Gaemon. And like, wow, you're never going to live that down as a teenage boy.
Yeah.
I know. That's so layered.
Yeah. You actually reached out to me, not that you knew who I was probably, but you reached out to me to get some Squamish speakers to speak to you. And I was like, oh, you have a podcast? I also want to have you on.
Yeah.
What is your podcast about? And why did you want to start it?
I reached out to you because I saw an implacable wall of internet and I just said, well, this will go into someone's inbox. And then funnily enough, I got a response from a real human being in 2026 and a podcaster and a language nerd. So a lot of these things synced up very well. My podcast is called Canuck as a Slur. It is very loosely about Canadian culture and history. And the reason it is so loose is because I don't love being pinned down to one thing, because I kind of just wanted to create as much of a breadth first cross section to the extent that I could. So there's stuff in there that is about language. There is stuff there that is very directly history. There is stuff that is talking about movies and TV. There's stuff about just different little subcultures within Canada. And the goal by the end of it is just to kind of have done as expansive of an overview as possible to show you like a little bit of everything, and primarily geared toward both for because I like the idea of it and being very pragmatic about audiences, trying to gear it towards an international audience rather than being so insular, but to say like, here's stuff you can learn that you might be interested in. That's kind of the first and foremost is I want every topic to be inherently interesting and not just inherently Canadian.
Where did you grow up and where are you now?
Tragically, the answer to both of those is the same. I am unfortunately an Alberta boy. I grew up in the Edmonton area. Definitely don't like to talk about exactly which area, but I've lived in Edmonton most of my life. I lived a little bit in Calgary when I realized I didn't have to live in Edmonton. And that was thrilling enough to me that I was like, I could live anywhere else. So I actually went abroad for a bit. Well, I went backpacking and I was going to start a new life in another country. And then there was a pandemic. I got stuck back in Edmonton and then I went through the whole process again of going, you know what, I really am done with Alberta. I know for sure this time I'm done. I went abroad again and I saved up money, quit my job, went whole hog on this podcast and thought, okay, I'm either going to figure out some kind of job or some kind of like, maybe work in hospitality or something somewhere, try to get a work visa, or this podcast will be raucously successful and then I'll just be able to be a digital nomad. And neither of those things panned out. So I have ended up back in Alberta for the time being.
It is hard to live off of a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, very hard. Very rare for people to actually make enough money to leave their jobs. I'm jealous when podcasters I listen to can do that.
Yeah.
My sister lives in Calgary, so she keeps me apprised of all the politics going on, and it sounds rough.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you have to hear about Alberta politics.
Well, I'm also in BC, so I'm going to hear about it anyway, but, it's more personal.
Yeah, enjoy your incoming international border with us. That's a different episode.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very different episode. Why did you name your podcast Canuck as a Slur?
I wish I had a much cooler answer, but it was really just a joke on one of my online friends. This is actually part of the inspiration of the podcast was I had some friends who were doing an Australian culture podcast, and they had pulled their idea a little bit from Britanology, which is a segment they do on Trash Future sometimes, and it involves one of their British cast members teaching their American cast member about British culture. And they were like, what if we just kind of covered Australian stuff? But they talked to each other. And I enjoyed it, and I loved listening to it while they were making it. But I remember listening to it and thinking it would be very fun to have that outsider angle. So one of the hosts of that podcast, my friend Josie, who was our guest on the Edmonton/West Edmonton Mall / the movie they made in West Edmonton Mall series, I convinced her once that Canuck was a slur because I think she was kind of saying like, am I allowed to say this word? And I just dead seriously told her like, no, that's the bad slur. Like that's the one you should not use.
Never mind that there's a whole hockey team called it. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she didn't know that. But I think it was around the time that I said, yeah, that's the word that the Americans used when they were rounding us into camps, that she said like, wait, hang on. I think you're messing with me. She ended up stopping doing that show, and then the remaining hosts of that show were the inaugural guest on Canuck as a Slur because I decided to present Don Cherry to them as outsiders, as Australians, as nerds, as non-sports people who just had zero context for any of this. That was the whole idea. I wrote it with them in mind, and I've just kind of continued with this idea of trying to find people from different countries as much as I can and just kind of subjecting to some element of Canada or another.
Subjecting. I'm trying to subject Megan to heated rivalry now.
Oh, yes.
We do have to get to heated rivalry at some point, but it's on the list.
I am the person that is going to be the outsider, obviously, and so much of an outsider, where when you said there's a whole hockey team named Canucks, but like also we had the Redskins in the United States for a very long time.
Being a Slur has never stopped people from naming a sports team that.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're the in-group in this case. We are the Canucks.
That is a little bit true, yeah. We're reclaiming the word.
Well, we kind of did.
Yeah.
Maybe slur is too strong a word, but it was a mean word originally. And we were like, oh yeah, Canuck, okay, sure.
The way I've explained it to people is it inhabits a very similar space to Yankee, where it has a kind of particular connotation, and it is a bit of a nickname, but a lot of people don't necessarily. It's not as famous as Yankee, right? And like Yankee has the obvious divide of like if you call somebody from the South a Yankee, they don't like it. Whereas Canuck is a little more universal, or at least settler English Canadian. But I mean, I'm also an Oilers fan, so to me, Canuck is kind of a derogatory term, but just not in that way.
Luckily, I don't really care that much, but otherwise we would have to fight.
Yeah.
Wait, so I purposefully did not Google Canuck because I was like, wait, do I actually know what it is? I assumed it was to describe a people, but is it all of Canada?
I would have to look at it again. It's not the most thrilling etymology. It was just used in... I'm going to be honest with you, I'm drawing a total blank. It is such an uninteresting answer, but it kind of emerged in a similar way to Yankee did. It became like a bit of a nickname, right? I will say this confidently. I believe if you look it up, it's going to say the etymology is disputed.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But apparently it originally was for French Canadians, which is so funny because it feels very Anglo now.
Really? I don't remember coming across that. This is now jogging my memory. So I believe one of these suggested etymologies is that it comes from like a Hawaiian word, Kanake or something.
Oh, really?
That meant, does it mean outsider or something? It's been so long since I looked into this. Again, that might be a very, very tenuous apocryphal etymology, but I believe I'd seen someone at least suggest that connection. And that Hawaiian word is also at least suggested as an etymology for a word, I believe in German, that is a slur. It is like a term for, I think, largely non-white outsiders. Because I remember when I was doing my backpacking, I was visiting my friend in Switzerland. And she had like a very international group of friends there in Zurich, and we were meeting up, and they were like, what's your podcast called? And I was like, oh, it's called Canuck as a Slur. And she's like, oh, that's a slur in German. It's a slur for Turkish people. And I was like, oh no, this is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Apparently it's Kanaka, and it refers to workers from various Pacific islands employed in British colonies, including BC.
So tell me about Johnny Canuck.
He's a mascot of that.
I'm seeing an editorial cartoon from 1910 portraying Johnny Canuck. I'm getting very Yankee. I'm seeing why you would use Yankee as an analogy for what this is.
Yeah, because as a character that you can stick in a political cartoon, you might kind of make him roughly analogous to Uncle Sam, although Uncle Sam has a more figurehead look and Johnny Canuck is a bit more everyman. But I think one of the things about Johnny Canuck as an example is it just doesn't have that much cultural hold. This is another thing I experienced when traveling is that for the vast majority of people today don't even recognize Canuck as a word. If they haven't heard of the hockey team, like especially people in Europe, they just hadn't heard the word at all. I had to use Yankee as an example to convey what it was. I even met, because I think this is also a bit generational, right? That's kind of just an old, tiny term now. I met somebody who is Canadian and probably like 19 years old, and she herself had never heard the word, I guess. She had no familiarity with it, I'll say that.
Wow, that's shocking to me.
That does touch nicely on one of the themes of the show, which is the way a lot of colonial culture or efforts at colonial culture are really, really paper thin. Like they just don't have a lot of depth to them and a lot of staying power, right? Because a lot of culture for what it is in not just Canada, but many colonial countries is kind of like wallpaper over all of the colonialism and all of the more deeply rooted culture that was there for a lot longer. And that's definitely a recurring motif in all of the stuff we talk about.
Let's switch to language more broadly. What is your interest in language?
I will term myself a linguistics nerd, but for the purposes of a linguistics nerd podcast, like I'm a very casual nerd. I did take Ling 101 in my undergrad, and I loved it. Truthfully, when I have those kind of could-have, should-have reflections and think, what if I had just done something I found really interesting, and that was the only value I had in my undergrad, I would have just majored in linguistics and just tried to learn more languages. I really wish I'd done that. I was fascinated by the content of it, but I just never found the time among what I did, which I majored in effectively planning, like urban planning and environmental planning and stuff.
More practical.
I did the perfect split the difference in the most unproductive way, which was instead of doing something I was passionate about, and instead of doing something that was a dead set way of getting a good paying job, I got something that was pragmatic on the surface of it if I had actually figured out how I was going to get a job out of it. But instead I got a bare minimum GPA, which is not enough to get into a master's, which you effectively needed to get a job in that field.
Ah, that makes sense, actually.
That's how I ended up in social work and EMS.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard from so many people that they've taken Ling 101 and just loved it and didn't go much further than that.
Yeah.
It's fun. Ling 101 is fun. It's supposed to be fun, I think.
It is fun. I think the lie they kind of tell you, this is also a bit generational, but I think people particularly of my parents' generation, which is you got to go to business school. You can't do anything in the humanities. I think for one thing, it just really reflects older realities of how the job market worked, but also just underappreciates what you can do with the humanities, or at least with your knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And the ability to create your own job. If you major in history and then you get your master's in history, you can start a history podcast. The people that I've encountered who I think have really cool jobs, and this is a thing I thought I could have done when I was 8, was be a translator. Like I've heard that is a very competitive field, but that is a thing you can do by studying language. Like there are real world applications, but it's just hard to understand that properly as, an 18, 19-year-old.
Yeah. Nowadays, at least for now, who knows how much longer this will last, but people who are translators are struggling. Not for every language pair and not in every subfield, but AI has taken some of those jobs.
And they're trying to unionize, I'm seeing. Interpreters are trying to unionize, like in Canada.
I mean, what job isn't AI currently ruining?
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to last forever because people are seeing how expensive it actually is now that they're actually giving price tags to the tokens as opposed to just like, $30 a month or whatever. Something's going to shift, and I think it's actually going to be very, very hard on the economy. But it needs to happen because fuck that bullshit.
Yeah, it's almost like it's just a speculative VC bubble that's kind of propped up by a very
almost like that
House of Cards shell game, to kind of mix metaphors.
It almost feels like the housing crisis of 2008. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Or the tulip crisis. But yeah, to get back to your actual question that you asked me.
Yes.
I was immediately enthralled by those linguistics basics. I should add, I did take one other course. I took French linguistics as part of my language requirement.
Oh, that's harder.
Yeah. I took French immersion school, so I speak fluent-ish French. Very helpful when trying to read French sources, at least, right? Which is somewhat useful in making the show. But I always kind of held on to the things I enjoyed about language. And I'm always been really obsessed with accents, dialects. I sponge up all these little things. And funnily enough, I did not have a linguistics podcast. So when you say, hey, I have a podcast, I checked it out. I kind of got nerd sniped here. Like, all these topics are very interesting.
But they're available for you to also work on.
Yeah. So for that reason, language has found its way into the show a lot. I actually kind of went through the list of episodes again because in our emails, I'd kind of deflectively been about I don't really have much to say about linguistic discrimination. But when you start looking at all the episodes, I'm like, actually, a lot of this has come up.
Yes, it does.
In part because these things are out there, and in part because I also kind of am drawn to them like a linguistic dowsing rod, where I'm like, I get a chance to talk about language, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. If you're going to talk about language, discrimination is going to be in there.
You almost can't help it because it just happens all the time and you don't even realize it until you're made aware of it. It just comes up.
Well, being made aware of it, that's so true, because one of the things that was so eye-opening when I took that linguistics course was basically if I had a professor and they weren't obviously from, this person seems like they're from India or they're from Eastern Europe or whatever, you just like, that guy sounds like me, he's Canadian. I didn't realize this professor was American. He was from California, right? So he spoke with a pretty muted newscaster accent. But it was only as he was explaining the Canadian accent to us and demonstrating how he couldn't do the Canadian raised vowels. He pointed to the light switch. Was like, what do you call this? And we're like, lights. He's like, I can't say that. Lights.
Who was
lights.
that, by the way?
Oh, I could not tell you, but he was a dude who seemed, I don't know, in 2012 or so, and he seemed like he could have been 40, and he was a white guy from California. Does that narrow it down? At the University of Alberta.
I could probably figure it out. Okay, thank you.
Wait, how do you say light?
How do you say the word, Megan?
Light.
Yeah, I think you actually have it. I don't remember if I ever tried to teach it. I used to be Megan's professor way back in the day.
Oh, interesting. Before I lose track of this question, you asked where I was from. Megan, where specifically are you from?
I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm now in Tucson. So like you, I haven't moved very far. I'm in the same state that I grew up in.
I mean, maybe Carrie's about to touch on this, but like you see a lot of the raising in northern states. So sometimes when people come from near Canada, they have stealthier accents.
So Canadian raising involves two vowels. We have the I and the ow. And so before voiceless sounds like T in light, we raise the vowel slightly. So it becomes small cap I as opposed to I. So a small cap I. So some Americans have the raising in the I sound, like you do actually, but a lot don't. Californians tend not to. And then there's ow, which very few Americans have. That's more northern.
A lot of Minnesotans, they're very tricky.
Minnesota does it. I think Wisconsin does it, but most Americans don't. And that's something like about. Sounds like a boot to Americans. Not what we say. It's closer to a boat for some people.
Yeah, there's a few people you listen and you're like, my goodness, you are getting dangerously close into saying a boot.
Yeah, there are some people. Yeah, that's true. But it's more varies across the country in different directions. Like actually in Halifax, they have the oat, the very oaty vowel there.
Why do I have it?
I don't know. Lots of Americans do. I don't know why sometimes you have it and some Americans have it and some don't. But ow, very few do. I don't know why. So no one ever picks on Canadians for the Canadian raising I. They only pick on us for the Canadian raising ow. And I think it's because some Americans have the raising in the I.
I can't even tell the difference when you say it. What is the other way?
Like I and I?
Light, 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 light.
Ah, okay.
The example, I believe this was from that same professor that I always use to demonstrate to people is that in kind of more standard US English, riding a book and riding a bike are the exact same word, right? That D turns into, what is that, an alveolar flap, I think? Right after the I. With raising, the T remains like a T sound. So I'm riding a bike, I'm writing a book.
So I have both the flapping and the raising because the raising happens first.
Yeah, writing a book. I mean, I guess maybe I'm exaggerating the sound when I do that, but that's a good point.
But it is true that the contrast still has to be there at some level because in Canadian English, we have writing and riding. Whereas Americans tend to just have riding for both.
I'm riding a bike and writing a book. Yeah. Carrie, is it?
There was nothing that noteworthy out of him as a teacher other than I just didn't realize until he explained it that even he, as a person who could articulate exactly what this vowel difference was, still couldn't reproduce it in his speech. That in itself tells you so much about how language works and how we adopt it.
Yeah. I have a real hard time with the aw sound. So the caught merger, I have the caught merger. So it's really hard for me to say caught versus caught. That vowel is really, really tricky for me.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Atmosphere, like the Minneapolis hip hop group. There's at least one song where he's got a real thick Minnesota accent and you can hear what's really interesting about this song. I'll have to dig it up and send it to you. He's rhyming these words as if he's not using the vowels differently, like bought and caught, but he's rhyming them together in the same way that I would. But you can hear two different vowel sounds that he's pinging back and forth because he's internally rhyming this same sound in like one verse. It's really cool. It's fascinating, yeah, to hear people's accent in song like hip hop. Another one that really messed with me with the same guy, he has this song where he's like, it's kind of this weird metaphor about like a person in his life and he analogizes them to a wolf. For the life of me, it sounds like he's calling it a woof, like you call a dog a woof.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely people who do that, who don't have L's after vowels like that. Also, I found out golf. Some people say golf. I only just found this out yesterday.
This is a thing I was hoping one of you might know more of because, again, casual linguistics nerd, a lot of the terminology is just beyond me. I love learning about it, but I don't necessarily retain all these little technical terms. So like if you are dropping those R's before certain vowels, like a non-rhotic accent, right? Referring rho meaning the letter R.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it seems like the more I listen, there's a lot of accent features in North America that seem to drop the L in the same way. Like, do we have a term for that? Because it seems like that also comes up. Like, I didn't really notice it was a thing until I heard people from mostly non-rhotic countries, it's almost like the inverse where they're like, why don't you pronounce the L in calm? Calm.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why don't you pronounce your R? Like, what are we doing here? Let's figure out this language already.
Yeah.
There probably is a term for that, but I actually don't know.
Which Canadians have the cot merger?
Most.
The merger being that they are the same?
Yeah, most.
I think it's all the same. This is kind of the question I was trying to ask. So we did a bonus episode. It's called About a Couch. It had Andrew Grant, who's a guy that just a friend showed me on Instagram, who was just doing a lot of linguistics reels. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
So I invited him on the show to talk about Canadian accents because he talks a lot about linguistics and a little bit about Canadian English. And I tried to ask, you've probably looked at this more than me. Surely we have more regionalization across Canada than we appreciate. But I don't know how well to articulate the difference between Western Eastern accents other than some very obvious features that make it clear you're from Atlantic Canada. He knew a little bit about it, but it seems like part of it is that it's just maybe not as well studied as you might think.
There are people who study Canadian English. The person that was most famous for it, I think, recently retired. But U of T, there's definitely some researchers out of the University of Toronto that study Canadian English. And a lot of it is more Ontario stuff because of where they are. So like the Golden Horseshoe, there's a lot of studying of accents around that general area of Toronto-ish area of Ontario.
Well, of course, in there, they call it the University of Toronto.
Yes, Toronto. I went there for my master's. There definitely are people who study it. I have a friend who's done Alberta, but mostly Mormon varieties of English.
What?
Yeah.
For example, please.
Well, I mean, like, there's a big Mormon population, specifically around Lethbridge, which is where she was at the time. And because of the way the Mormon church works, there's a lot of American influence. So they have the milk for milk, stuff like that. There definitely is research out there. Happy to point you to some people and some papers. But you're right that it's understudied in comparison to a lot of other Englishes.
Yeah, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah, relatively speaking. There's just so much, especially in Canada, there's already so much other stuff to look at too. So maybe we don't focus enough on our own varieties. I don't know.
Well, one of my favorite little phenomena I've learned about from being more online, I think, was the very specifically Albertan. Well, okay, maybe I'll just drop this quickly on you, Carrie. Like if you put a sticker on a car, what is it called?
I don't know what my actual pronunciation is anymore. I want to say decal, but decal also sounds fine to me.
What is a decal?
Yeah, okay, I was waiting for that reaction.
Get out of town.
Get out of town.
It's never come up, right? So Megan used to make fun of me for the way I say pasta or sorry. Like these things are very overt to Americans, those kinds of things. But first
so is
of all,
pasta as opposed to pasta a Canadianism?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pasta
okay.
is the way that most Americans say it. And to me, it just sounds so snooty.
Yeah.
And I think pasta sounds snooty.
Really? Oh, it's interesting.
Yes.
What's the vowel in Italian? Pasta.
It's right in between the two vowels. The foreign A that gets borrowed into English, you have to make a choice. You either push it forward to a or you push it back to ah because we don't have the vowel in the middle.
Is it the same as Spanish?
Spanish, Italian, like there's lots of languages that have that vowel that English, at least North American English, tends not to have except in the diphthongs. So in I, the first part of that vowel is actually the central A, but we don't have it by itself.
So decal, my mind is blown.
Yeah, I was taught that as an Albertanism, but I think obviously languages do not respect the straight lines we draw on maps. But my experience with that word was I was very young and I was playing the video game Lego Island. And they would be like, you can put a decal on your car. And I thought, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's what you would call that. And I think I got chided by my brother. I was away from the game and being like, hey, look at that decal. And he was like, you idiot, that's a decal. And I was like, okay. And then I changed my pronunciation. And then years later, as I interacted with people who were not from Alberta, they're like completely insane to say decal. A decal is a little thing you put like a beer coaster or something. Like it's its own word. Deckle.
I don't know that one.
I believe it's a German word.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. I know in linguistics, nothing is ever wrong. But as somebody from that region, I'm going to say, no, decal is a pervert pronunciation. Just say decal.
Yeah.
I don't have any particularly strong feelings about it. I don't actually know what my real pronunciation is because I hear both.
Do Canadians not have bumper stickers?
We also have that word, yes.
A decal is like a graphic, like in Alberta, I'll tell you what it is. It's a giant thing that says fuck Trudeau. Sorry, now it says fuck Carney that you put on the back of your giant fuck off truck.
Oh, but it's on a window, right?
Not necessarily.
I believe definitionally it's just big enough to be an intentional logo, like often with transparency that you put across the side or a window. Like a sticker is just a sticker. A sticker is you can put on anything, but like you go to a shop to get them to put a decal on.
That is a decal, for sure. Okay.
But to your point, what is the difference between a decal and a sticker? Well, context.
Yeah.
To me, they kind of overlap, but I'm not really sure.
It's a gentrified sticker.
Yeah, sure.
For both of you, what is your connection to French? Because French has kind of a status in Canada that I don't quite understand because we don't really have that in the United States. It's like English supremacy.
So it all begins in the year 1492. And so my personal relationship to French, because the historical relationship of French to Canada is something that will be told across about 10,000 episodes by the end of this podcast. My relationship to it is that my dad is Franco-Albertan. So for him growing up bilingual, he said he started learning English when he was like 5 or 6. So you would never know by talking to him. At this point, he doesn't really know French, honestly, like not in a meaningful way. My grandparents were more definitively Francophone. I mean, my grandma's still alive. She just turned 100.
Whoa.
Yeah. So her hearing is not what it was. And she's so used to being spoken to in English that my dad tried to get across a word to her in French. Like just sometimes just being fancy. You'd be like, you just point out a thing and call it the French thing. And just as a sort of like, remember, this is like our culture. And she doesn't realize that she's being spoken to in French because she's hard of hearing and looking for English and listening for English. It's a subculture that has really, really been eliminated, but also in large part because of linguistic policy, right? When Alberta was founded as a political entity or like inaugurated as a proper province, there were political decisions made early on. English will be the language of instruction of schools. And the whole issue of does French get taught in schools it's been a long and winding thing. And long story short, it tends to mostly get taught in Catholic schools, but there are some immersion programs. And of course, that is, as always, to say nothing of all the indigenous languages of the region, right?
Right. So you were in immersion, though, but not Catholic.
I was able to take French immersion in secular, regular public school. Public school is the word I'm looking for. Up to the 9th grade. When my oldest brother took it, he did it all through high school. The next brother took it through 11th grade, and then they canceled the program because there was not enough interest. And that was kind of my assumption was like, oh yeah, there's just no way I can continue without going to the Catholic school in town, as some of my classmates did. But this isn't a suburb, and it turns out if I had actually really wanted to, I also could have just gone to a school in Edmonton because there were other schools continuing with French immersion. So I didn't get the last 3 years of my immersion, unfortunately, so that didn't necessarily help my French. And then once I was done school, there's nowhere really to speak it in Alberta. We go into this in some more depth. Well, it's in a bonus episode, so I'm not going to tell everyone to go listen to it, but there are communities in Alberta that are still like more Francophone identifying than others, and a lot of them have French names, like Beaumont is one. Anglicized to Beaumont. Morinville is the one where there was some sort of language instruction row. I think it had to do with the fact that there only was the Catholic school teaching it there, and people were like, this is me really, really pulling on old threads that I don't remember. But I believe people were saying like, well, we should have institutionalized a right to access French education in public schools.
Tell me, is Alberta near Quebec? Do they touch?
No.
Oh, dear.
No. Megan, no. It's right next door to BC.
Edit that out.
No, keep it in. This is an American speaking.
Alberta is directly above you.
Yeah.
That's fine. I was visiting people in Washington State who did not know where Alberta was.
I'm in the South, okay?
I feel bad because she should know because she is friends with me.
Okay, so Tara, in BC, you were in French immersion. Why and how?
No.
Oh, you weren't?
I was not. My brother and sister were. At this point, I was in Prince Rupert, BC. They didn't bring in a French immersion until my sister was, I think, maybe in grade 1, maybe kindergarten. So I was too old, so I didn't get it. My sister and my brother both were put in, and guess who's the linguist? And who would have actually benefited from it?
Yeah.
My brother dropped out in like grade 10 because he just couldn't, he just hated it so much. My sister did the whole thing, but she doesn't use French.
Right.
Yeah, I'm still salty about that after all these years.
That's interesting because you're both saying like in BC and Alberta, like basically you maybe learn it, but there's like no places to really speak it.
Yeah. So for the historical background, French settlers went all across Canada. So this is actually a thing I only learned as I was doing a little bit of research for the Franco-Alberta episode, but French was the first European language spoken in the area that is now Alberta. French settlers got there first. The reason that English is the dominant language in Canada, to be extremely reductive, is the 7 Years' War, right? France lost, they gave up most of their territorial holdings. But the settlers didn't go anywhere. So the settlers were all across what we now call Canada and the US. There was way, way more French presence in the northern United States. So my dad's family, we have some stuff on the lineage that we've been digging through or I've been able to see recently. If you go far back enough, I have ancestors that were in Quebec and they went down via Michigan, which had a lot of French-speaking population, and then like west across the US and then up north to Alberta. So they took a very long U shape to even get to Alberta, but that's just one little family branch, right? So my partner is also from, her dad's side is French Canadian, but they're like one more generation removed from the language. So her dad also grew up just Anglophone, but her grandparents are kind of like my dad in terms of having grown up very bilingual. But that was in Saskatchewan. So her background in that thread would be like Franco-Saskatchewan or Francescois, if you prefer. But every province in Canada has a flag now. You can look it up on Wikipedia. There's like a flag for every province's French population. The Franco-Alberta flag actually looks really dope, I think.
Yeah, I like it.
It's the artwork for our episode on it. And I actually took a picture of this. I was walking my friend's dog. This kind of central part of Edmonton I'm in, it is where more of the French population was. So there is still like a neighborhood that has Stop Arrête on its signs. There's a poutine shop that has a French language newspaper you can obtain in it. The University of Alberta's Faculté Saint-Jean's there. And this one French school there, naturally, I think a Catholic school, it's flying the Franco-Alberta flag. I had not actually seen one flown in public before. It's only from the 80s, I believe. We talked about this also on the bonus, but my cousin, who is 17 years older than me, was a school child in the 80s, and they had a contest for the flag, and hers didn't win, but she had to submit a design for it.
That's very cool.
That's really fun.
Yeah, I like the BC one, too. I've never seen it before.
But a lot of the people that will want you to understand that they are French Canadian and not Quebecois are people next to Quebec. So the New Brunswick French speakers, like generally Acadians, and the Franco-Ontarians are very bullish on the distinction, and for reasonable reasons. Like they are not from Quebec, they are French Canadian.
See, that's why I asked about where Alberta was, because I was like, okay, are you near Quebec? And what is that tension? But what is the difference between Quebecois French and Albertan French?
This is something I tried to pry into a little bit by talking to my cousin, who she remembers growing up around our grandparents and aunts and uncles and French being spoken at family gatherings. And I don't have memories of this. That's the difference even 15, 16, 17 years will get you. And a lot of it is because the siblings of my dad's family, for the most part, married Anglophones. So my mom is from Seattle. She doesn't speak a lick of French.
Are you also a citizen here?
I am a citizen. I don't have a social security number or a passport, and I do not even know if I could realistically get one. The thing I would like to use an American passport for is to take advantage of stuff like the Dutch-American Friendship Treaty, which allows you to move to the Netherlands if you start a business. So.
Sorry, I cut you off. So yeah, the history of your family and like speaking Albertan French.
Yeah, so I tried to do a little digging to see if I could identify more of what linguistic differences there would have been. And it's just tough because, again, one of the best founts of information would have been my grandparents when my grandfather was alive and my grandmother was a little more less hard of hearing and just easier to draw back on that stuff. Truthfully, my dad and a lot of his siblings, they just haven't really stayed in the language very much that I could really pick their brains about it, or I don't necessarily see them often. I've tried a few times, like my dad, when he was 14 years old, took the train across Canada to go to Expo 67 in Montreal. And I was like, do you remember feeling like these guys had a different accent? And he's like, nope. Okay. Simple answer.
Oh,
that seems unlikely.
But like I said, I didn't realize I couldn't articulate the difference between my accent and like standard American newscaster until a professor explained it to me.
That's true.
I truly thought I talked like the people on TV.
Yeah.
When you don't have the ear for linguistics, it's amazing what you cannot notice. Like a lot of people who have thick Canadian accents, to me, I just thought that was their voice or their personality. And now I listen to hockey broadcasts and I'm like, holy shit, this guy sounds Canadian.
Yeah. I had that experience because I lived in the States for 12 years. And every once in a while, I would be like listening to something from CBC or whatever. And I would be like, oh my God, I sound so Canadian. And now I'm back and I don't hear it as much. But I bet with hockey, like more local stuff, I would.
I follow hockey somewhat resentfully because sports culture is deeply tainted. But I'm also hopelessly addicted to the sport itself. So listening to some broadcasts this spring and listening to Chris Cuthbert particularly doing announcements, and I'm like, he's really in that a boot area. One of the useful concepts that came out of the discussion with Andrew on our Canadian English episode was the idea of you don't always hit the same vowel every time. You have this fuzzy target, as he calls it.
Yeah.
As long as it lands within that area, then it sounds correct to you. And if you hear a vowel outside of your familiar area, that's when you hear the accent. So if there's enough overlap in your areas, so it's not that people entirely say a boot, but some people have a boot within their fuzzy target, I would say.
Yeah, that's
and
probably
he's
true.
one of them, yeah.
I never do though, so.
Yeah, great. Are you also from Vancouver? Or are you also like from the area you're in?
Well, I'm from British Columbia. We moved around a bit.
But you're a Western Canadian, so you're probably more of an boat person than a boat person.
I'm not an boat person because our public health person who is always telling people like what to do during COVID, Bonnie Henry, she's originally from Halifax and she has OD ows, like very OD. I don't have that. It's very obvious to me that she is from not here. So I don't know what a BC-ish vowel is, but it's not O. It's something else.
Very interesting because I've always, or at least I've come to conceive of Canada as mostly an east-west gradient of a boat on the west and a boat on the east.
It's more complicated than that.
Clearly, yeah. Again, I would love to see a study that explains this a little better.
I bet you there's work on that because Canadian raising is pretty well studied, like out of all the features of Canadian English. So there probably is some sort of dialect map for that.
Yeah. There's another really troubling thing is, how everyone correctly makes fun of Jordan Peterson for sounding like Kermit the Frog, but I will listen to myself and other Albertans and I'm like, oh no, our accent is Kermit the Frog. There's a little bit of that.
Now that you say that,
yeah,
I hear it. I hear you with the Kermit-y voice, just a little though, not as much as him.
I don't have it in front of me, but there was one of our episodes when I was editing it and I was like, oh my God, I could not have said that more Muppetly.
More Muppetly.
If it comes to me by the end of the episode, I'll tell you what it was. But yeah, unfortunately, some of the worst people are from my part of the world. So Jordan Peterson is from the Edmonton area. This was an interesting bit of discovery, I think a bit relevant to stuff you were talking about, like the Chomsky episode, but I dove into Marshall McLuhan a little bit. There was a person on one of my kind of, very pretty distinctly left-leaning servers that was like, I love McLuhan, he's so cool. And I started listening to him. I'm like, this guy's interesting. But then as I listened more, I was like, this guy feels like a proto-Jordan Peterson. I didn't say that with our guest because the guest was like a friend of a friend who I felt was maybe probably a lot softer on Peterson. I was like, I'm not trying to have debate club here, but by the end of it, and then after I'd recorded it, I did more research and there was this article on McLuhan talking about like how much he loved Mussolini. And I was like, oh, well.
Great. Great.
McLuhan, also an Edmonton boy.
Well, okay, McLuhan at least is more complicated than Peterson, like, because there's some interesting stuff that he's done. He's not like totally monstrous in the same way.
No, he's like fine. I just don't like a lot of people were into Mussolini, but I don't like the road that he paved for people like Jordan Peterson.
I guess that's true. Okay, we can blame him then.
This has also been another real black mark. But speaking of absolutely toxic hockey culture, I have to say alleged rapist who was acquitted, currently on the way to the Stanley Cup, Carter Hart, is from my hometown. So none of it is very good.
Oh, yeah, no, that's brutal.
Allegedly. If people ask where I'm from, I'm going to say allegedly. I'm allegedly from a suburb that shall not be named.
Well, now you've given it away because people would look it up. But anyway.
I'm sure I've said it before, but it's a dark place.
Yeah. Well, at least Mr. Wonderful does not come from Alberta. At least he's an Ontario boy.
Yeah, good old Ontario boy.
God. I heard a whole podcast about the boat accident that his wife was involved in. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I know way too much about whatever his real name is.
Wait, you mean Kevin O'Leary?
Kevin O'Leary.
Okay, I was like, is this another guy with a boat accident? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Kevin O'Leary.
Much different from a boot accident.
I know, I was like, you both said it and I almost was like, what? Oh, boat. Okay. Yeah. Like it took me a second.
Okay, well, this has been a lot, so maybe before we let you go, is there anything you wish that we'd asked you about or anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Oh my God, did we already hit an hour? I was just getting started.
No, the range of this episode.
Yeah, the thing that I continually realize, as I said near the beginning, is that going from a surface level thought of, I don't have that much to say really about language itself. I have a lot to say about language, but the specific theme of linguistic discrimination felt a bit intimidating. But there's truly so much intersection of it across the podcast. And I do enjoy dredging it up every time. Like the most recent time was in our latest series, which is out now on Jacques Cartier, and getting to just try and tease apart how these things have changed, not just in terms of the differences between contemporary English and 16th century English. You also get to experience that in French. But this is something that I honestly just hadn't examined that closely, was you also have to account for how much languages have changed with things like Iroquois and Mi'kmaq. The words that they were jotting down at the time have also evolved over 500 years. And I think that is something that I've really tried to work into the show, is taking a minute to stop and actually investigate the language a little more to hopefully get an angle that has maybe been a little bit under-discussed. And that's sort of to pivot to the initial reason for why we ended up gathered here, was I decided I wanted to try and cover as many Indigenous dialects as possible, because Canada is such a diverse country in terms of the languages that have existed here, but so many of them are endangered and wildly under-discussed. This was something that I was flatly not taught about in school. We were not taught about the languages of the region where I came from. A thing I'm going to say is a big part of why I've leaned into the language stuff is I have this very embarrassing memory of the first time I went out backpacking and talking to people this was probably in Central Asia, probably in Kazakhstan or something, where people didn't really have much knowledge of Canada at all, and asking me quite genuinely, like, is there a Canadian language? And me kind of defaulting to, well, we have English and French, and literally forgetting there's a ton of Canadian languages.
Yes.
And so all of the language stuff is a bit of atonement for that, and trying to learn a bit about it myself, because just starting to realize how many place names are Indigenous words, which ones are, which ones aren't. Yeah, it's just great fun, and I wish people knew more about the languages of their region. So we have managed to cover Plains Cree so far. Carrie has gotten me connected with somebody who hopefully will be able to come on and talk about Squamish, but that is just truly the tip of the iceberg. And I would like to be able to celebrate the language diversity a little bit, but it is challenging to get a hold of not just speakers, ideally teachers, but also people that are willing to volunteer their time, because I am a very low budget podcast and I can't pay people for their time yet. Podcasters are usually happy to kind of like tit for tat, do each other's things for free, but I had asked a friend who has a mixed heritage who had been reconnecting with the Indigenous part of her heritage and had been going through a lot of processes. And I was like, these elders you talk to, are there any language instructors in that space? And she was like, I could maybe look into it, but probably a lot of people are just used to being paid for their time, whatever they do. And I was like, reasonably, because that is how most of the world works and how I would like the podcast to work. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, we can't pay our guests either.
Well, patreon.com/the Vocal Fries. I assume it's
Vocal Fries Pod. Yes,
Vocal Fries Pod. There you go. Yeah.
That's correct. Yes. Thank you. We're so bad at
Thank you. We're so bad.
Well, anyway, this has been great. And we always leave our listeners with one final message.
Don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole.
And while we're at it, patreon.com/Canuck is a slur.
Yes.
Don't be an asshole. Support friendly local podcasters.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.